Hello, and welcome to the Wandering Creatives Podcast. I'm your host, Allie, and joining me for today's episode is Mike Allen. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
I am really looking forward to our conversation today. We connected on Facebook. I can't remember exactly how. I think I posted in maybe a podcasting group or a local.
I think it was the My Favorite Murder group. Maybe.
Was it?
I think it was the Triangle Murderinos, maybe.
Oh my gosh, that makes me love you even more. Triangle Murderinos. That's amazing. Oh my gosh. Yes. Oh, that makes me so happy that you're in that group.
Oh, I'm a total true crime geek. True crime geek.
Oh no, Mike, we're going to have to talk offline about true crime. Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm definitely, I'm going to follow up on that after the recording, because otherwise our episode will turn into just us geeking out about true crime.
Oh, I have some stories I can tell you.
No. Okay. We're going to talk later. So it was, you reached out to me on Facebook and I eventually got back to you, and you have this amazing journey of kind of supporting the arts and really using music as a way to advocate for causes that you're passionate about, and using your background in like advertising and marketing to really put together some amazing benefits. And you have a pretty tremendous kind of career throughout the years, and I'm extremely excited to talk to you about it. So you've worked for like ad agencies, you've organized benefit concerts, you founded the Lake Forest Listening Room, which I have to pay a visit to that sometime because it sounds like right up my alley. It sounds absolutely amazing. You co-founded Be Good to Yourself, which is a nonprofit dedicated to providing free mental health care for North Carolina musicians, which again is an amazing cause and something that we absolutely need, especially given the last couple of years. I feel like we all need a little extra care. So you've done some really amazing things, and I'm just so pumped to have you on and to talk about kind of your journey and how you got into using music and creativity and tying it all into advocating for the causes that you love. So thank you again so much for being on today.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. How did you get into kind of organizing benefits and the music scene?
Well, I don't know how far back you want me to go, but just a little bit about me. So my family is from North Alabama and Mississippi. So I grew up in kind of on the Tennessee River in a town called Decatur, Alabama. Okay. My dad's family was from Florence, which is right near Muscle Shoals. So maybe I got a little of the music bug that way. I don't know. Both my grandfathers were writers in various capacities. My aunt, Mary, my dad's sister, is a writer. She worked for UCLA. So I've got the writing thing in my DNA as well. But so I grew up in North Alabama, moved around as a kid, ended up in Charlotte, North Carolina, finished my high school, finished my senior year there, went to University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And, like many kids, didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. My roommate at the time was taking some advertising journalism courses, which is a program that had just started at the J School in Chapel Hill. And I kind of saw what he was doing and I was like, that's really cool, because I knew I wanted to write, but I didn't really want to go into newspapers. And this advertising copywriting program had just started. So I'm like, that's really neat. So I started taking courses and caught the bug and did great, got recruited out of college to an agency in Birmingham. And then from there on, it was, I moved to Asheville, Cincinnati, Dallas, and then back to Charlotte in 2003. So gotten a lot of great experience, learned the business, learned how to do television commercials, learn how to do radio commercials, learn how to write for big clients like American Airlines and Bank of America and Subaru and JCPenney. So it's been a fun ride. Being a creative is fun. It's also stressful. When you have, got to deliver the goods in a very short amount of time, playing with other people's money.
So like you said, you're a writer. Have you kind of stuck to I guess is it copywriting?
Copywriting,
Yeah.
advertising copywriting. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you kind of like stuck with that through your entire career, or have you done like, you got a book out there somewhere, Mike, that I don't know about?
I have written 2 books. I call them books. They were freelance projects for Electricities, North Carolina, which is the public power cooperative around the state. And they do a project every year where, well, the 2 I wrote were highlighting their towns in Eastern North Carolina and their towns in Western North Carolina. So they enlisted me to write little stories about the towns. And so we published 2 coffee table kind of books, one called Facing East and one called Facing West. And so I got to travel around. This was several years ago. I got to travel around and see the towns and interview people and just kind of soak it in. And that was so much fun. So yeah, not fiction books, but I'm pretty proud of these. They turned out really well.
Yeah, that sounds like it would have been a pretty awesome project to be on.
It was fun. I saw parts of the state I had never seen before and places that I would go back to.
Did you grow up with a lot of music in kind of your household, or how did you kind of find your way into your love of music and wanting to kind of tie that into, I mean, you've really like married up like your passions like really well, like music and writing and advertising and using it for like amazing causes. So it's nice to see someone who can like bundle things so well, like put all of your passions together in such a great way. Like that's awesome, because I think people have a hard time figuring out how to mesh the things they love together, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I stumbled into a lot of this stuff, but to answer to your music question, my mom played a little piano when she was young. We did not have a piano or any instruments in my house growing up, but my grandmother in Mississippi had a piano, and my grandparents in Alabama had a piano. So, I would play around on those when I was there for Christmas and Thanksgiving. But I think when I really discovered that I loved music was we had I don't know if you remember, these big stereo consoles that you lifted the top up and there was a turntable in there.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes.
So I would sit for hours and listen to my mom and dad's. They had jazz records. They had soundtrack, Rodgers and Hammerstein soundtracks, and I would sit there and listen to those for hours. And that, I think that's kind of was my formative experience with music. And then, when I discovered the Beatles, everything changed. Mm-hmm. In fact, I started mowing yards to make money so I could go buy Beatles records. And I have a lifelong love for the Beatles. So that's kind of where it started.
I feel like that's something, I'm going to sound really old. I feel like that's something that the youth of today might be missing out on a little bit, right? Because I had the internet a little bit growing up, but like we didn't have hundreds of TV channels or like streaming things to entertain us. We didn't have cell phones. Like the internet wasn't really a thing. And so you spend a lot of your time with music. Like my brothers and I used to put on, I guess it was like book on record essentially, because it was a Cabbage Patch Kids record, but it was like a whole story. And we would just sit there and listen to this record about Cabbage Patch Kids.
Yeah, but Allie, vinyl records are the #1 selling format now in the world. In fact,
that's true.
They're so backed up manufacturing wise that it's a lot of these artists are having trouble getting their records, in a timely manner. But my daughter, who is a freshman at Appalachian State, she has a turntable. She's buying vinyl, which makes me so happy. I can't stand it. Yeah, and I even have cassettes.
Yes.
And nowhere to play them. So I had to go out and buy a little cassette player for my office. But, in CDs, my car doesn't even have a CD player anymore.
Yeah. Isn't that wild?
I had to go out and buy a CD player for my house just to listen to what I had. Yeah. So it's changing. But I'm so happy that vinyl is back, because there's something about, opening an LP, smelling that ink, reading the liner notes, flipping it over. My daughter was like, what is this? What is this? What is this thing you've given me? What is this big platter of plastic? I'm like, yeah, it'll change your life.
Yeah, I used to have one of the tiny portable ones that was just like a little suitcase, and you pop it open and you could play the smaller records on there, and it was like a rainbow on the inside. Loved it.
Yeah.
But so happy that vinyl is making a comeback.
This episode of the Wandering Creatives podcast is sponsored by Coots Creations, branding and marketing for creatives by creatives. Coots Creations serves small businesses, entrepreneurs, and creatives throughout the country with branding, marketing, and social media management. We accomplish this by creating unique graphics, a cohesive visual brand, and content that tells your brand's story and builds trust with your customers. Visit cootscreations.com and book your free consultation today.
When it comes to, like we were kind of talking about, like finding a way to incorporate all of your passions into one thing, like how did you get into the advocacy part of what you do? Was that like a natural kind of, like, did you just naturally morph into a way to support the causes that you believe in?
Yeah. And I think a little bit of a backstory would be helpful here, because when I was working as a creative director in an ad agency in Chapel Hill, I can't remember what year it was, maybe 2009, 2010, I happened to see, I was reading the Indie Week, which is the kind of the arts publication around here. And I read about this group called the Coalition Unchained Dogs, whose mission at the time, I think they're still around, was they would go over to like inner city Durham, even outlying areas, and go up and knock on the doors of dog owners who had their dogs chained to trees or cars or whatever, and say, we will build you a free fence, and if you will agree to take your dog off the chain. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. It was all volunteer. And so I had a couple of creative interns working for me, and I showed them that. And I said, why don't you guys approach them about doing some marketing for them? I knew the group had, I think, just done one concert. So we renamed their concert Music for Fences, and my interns did an ad campaign for them. And that's kind of how I got into that. And then they asked me to help organize the music benefits. But when I moved back to Wake Forest in 2003, I was having a beer with some friends over in Chapel Hill. We started talking about the music of the 80s in this area, especially in Chapel Hill when we were in school, and how it was kind of the place where really good bands played between Atlanta and DC. And you could go out in Chapel Hill any night of the week and see, great music. I saw REM, I saw the Replacements, all these bands would come through, but no one had ever done a documentary about that decade. So I started shooting a documentary film around 2005, where I reconnected with a lot of the musicians who I just adored as a college student. And I got to sit down with them and interview them on camera, shoot their performances. I have like 125 hours of footage that I have filmed from everybody from Mitch Easter, who produced REM's records, to Don Dixon, it goes on and on and on. So that's how I kind of reconnected with a lot of musicians. And that kind of led straight into the Stand Against HB2 benefit concert series. So in 2016, when they passed that awful law, it pissed me off. Sorry to curse, but
nah, let it out, Mike. Let it out.
It's like when our state government had a whole list of problems they could be tackling, they went after transgender people, and that just made me mad. So I had been thinking about that, and then my friend Rod Abernathy and Caitlin Carey, who are both musicians, contacted me and said, we want to do something to protest this thing, but we don't know what to do. Can you help? And so I sat down, got a group of people together, and that's kind of how it was born. We called it Stand Against HB2. We did our first show at the Hall River Ballroom in Saxapa, which is like an 800-person venue there. So I had never planned anything on that scale before. I had no idea what I was doing, because it's not only securing the venue, but I got T-shirts made, I got posters made, I had to arrange catering, I had to arrange what they call the back line, which is the instruments that sit up on the stage that all the bands use, so we don't have to move stuff on and off. I had to put together a group of volunteers to handle stage management, to handle volunteers, to just coordinate. I had to go to caterers and ask them to donate food and beer for the musicians. I mean, it was a massive undertaking. We had I think that first show we had 20 bands.
Oh my God.
And we went from noon till past midnight. So, I mean, there was a lot of coordination that had to happen. So, I was learning on the fly. I had never done this before.
That's so amazing, though. So,
but it's such
came off a great cause, though, too.
Oh yeah, I mean, I asked the top bands in the state, and they all said yes, and they all performed free. And I think that first concert, we raised like $10,000 for Equality NC.
You did several benefits, right?
Well, I got to say, yeah, when that first one was finished, I was like, I'm taking a month off. This is just kill me. And then I think some musician, I can't remember who it was, said, you should do these. You should do more of these. You should do these across the state. And I'm like, right. I've got time for that. I have a full-time job and a family. But, the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, yeah, I have the blueprint now. My company was so flexible in letting me, pursue this passion. So, yeah, we did the next one in Winston-Salem. We did the one after that was Wilmington. Then we did Asheville. Then we did Charlotte. And we ended back up at the Cat's Cradle 2 days before the 2016 election, which I don't even want to talk about. But
yeah,
all in all, I had 120 different North Carolina artists play. I can't remember the exact total amount of money we raised for equality. I had legislators come speak. I had civic leaders come speak. I had this was an interesting thing. Chad, what is his last name? Chad, it'll come to me in a minute. The guy that founded Etsy. He grew up in Greenville, North Carolina, and he contacted me and said, he gave me, I think he donated $5,000 and flew down and spoke at the first concert.
Gosh.
Yeah, I'll come up with his last name in a minute. Anyway, they were this outpouring of support. I also had to raise like $15,000 through a GoFundMe so I could pay travel expenses and hotels for the musicians who traveled and put them up, So it was a massive undertaking.
I'm almost speechless because it's an amazing cause. And then two, being able to put it together really just blows my mind because I've organized small events, conferences and done marketing and advertising for smaller things, but putting something like that together takes a lot of work. And then that overall experience just had to be, I imagine it's probably one of the more kind of amazing things.
Oh, it was life-changing. I don't know how we did it, to be quite honest with you. It just kind of came together and I learned as I went. But I would say I saw one of your questions was, what would you say to someone who, wanted to do something like this or, anything cause related? It's find something that you're passionate about, something that you love or something that makes you really angry and you want to change. And then surround yourself with people who are of like mind and start organizing and contacting the people who, you see as the change makers and get them on board. So, yeah, that's kind of how I didn't have a roadmap. I just was kind of winging it. But like I said,
passion, that's amazing.
Yeah, I was so focused on overturning this law. And so were the musicians and artists in this state. I don't think I had anyone turn me down other than I'm on the road, can't play because I'm touring, but no one turned me down.
I think your advice on finding something you're passionate about and just starting to organize it and start reaching out to people because you'll be surprised by who will say yes.
Yeah. My philosophy was never be afraid to ask anybody anything because all they can say is no.
Exactly. Exactly. And then you move on to the next.
Yeah. You have to kind of go into that with that mindset.
Do you know what goes great with listening to podcasts? If you said a warm drink, you're absolutely right. Just imagine you're sitting back, you're listening to your favorite podcast, all while holding a nice, cute-ass mug in your hand with your favorite hot beverage in it. If you're wondering, where can I get a mug like that? Well, you're in luck. you can swing by the Coots Creations Cute Coffee and Tea Mugs Etsy shop. They've got everything from enamel coffee cups to travel mugs, all featuring adorable original artwork. Head over to etsy.com/shop/Coots Creations and use promo code WANDER for 10% off any mug.
In 2017, so just a few years ago, well, I mean, I guess we're going on like 4 years ago, but in 2017, you founded the Wake Forest Listening Room, which is a live music series that takes place in Wake Forest, North Carolina, your hometown. Yeah. And you've had more than 300 shows there before the pandemic. Tell us a little bit about the Listening Room. What's your goal with the Listening Room?
Yeah, so it started as, there were a few like bars and sports bars and stuff in Wake Forest that would have live music, but they would be cover bands. And this is not to denigrate cover bands, but, Jimmy, they'd be singing Wagon Wheel and Jimmy Buffett songs, and nobody would be paying attention. Yeah, they were background. They were background music, or in sports bars, you feel like you have to play in a sports bar. You're competing against television sets and, beer. And I looked around the town and I was like, we don't have a live music venue for original music, which was really important to me because I love people that play their own songs that they write. So it really started with me lugging a sound system around and setting it up in coffee shops or restaurants that would want to have live music, putting out a tip bucket, giving the money to the musicians, giving all the money to the musicians. And then we found a home, I think in 2018, in a space below the Sugar Magnolia Cafe in downtown Wake Forest. They had a room down there that was being used by different artists that had little artist stalls and stuff, and wasn't a big money maker. So they cleaned out that. We put a stage in, we put a permanent sound system in. Turned out to be a great sounding room. I learned how to mix sound for shows, which I had never done before. So I have that skill now.
That's awesome.
And I started booking bands that I loved, and it's kind of grown since then. We at the time we were doing shows every Friday and Saturday night, and sometimes Sunday. Now we're because of the pandemic and just looking at the cost and the logistics, we're doing 4 to 5 shows a month, which is great for me. It gives me a little free time on weekends. But I can walk there from my house, and it's just a great little haven for me to go on a Friday or Saturday night and listen to wonderful music.
I'm definitely going to have to come check it out because that sounds just absolutely wonderful.
I call it a safe space for musicians because all the shows are seated and people really do listen and they don't talk. It's kind of self-policing. I think we've only had one incident where these inebriated people came in and just started having a conversation in the back, talking over the musician. And I finally, it's like, do you really not have any self-awareness? And, people turn around and go, shh, but they didn't pay attention. And I finally had to say, guys, be quiet or leave. And they said some choice words for me and left. But generally it's a very courteous environment. Musicians love it because I don't know of another such venue. The closest one is a place called the Evening Muse in Charlotte. But other than that, I think we're it.
That sounds that's my kind of vibe, man. You can just sit down, listen to music and enjoy it and just be in the space. Do you primarily get like local artists or do you bring folks in?
It started with just local, singer-songwriters and bands that I really loved. And now it has expanded to regional artists. I have national people contact me as they're coming through North Carolina and say, hey, I've heard about this. Like I had Lou Barlow from Dinosaur Jr. played. I had Robbie Fulks play. I've had Jim Avett, the Avett brothers' father, has played. I'm trying to I said, bring your boys over the next time you come. But no, it's gotten a lot of traction because of the uniqueness, I guess, the environment. So yeah, I'm getting booking agents. I don't know how many emails I get a week asking to play. So it's an embarrassment of riches, but it's great for me because I have people that I just adore and I'm able to bring them to my little town and they want to come back.
It's such an amazing thing that you've built. Like you've really like, it's just so cool because you've taken that thing that you love or are so passionate about, and you've really like built this perfect little, well, like you were saying, like a safe space, like a haven for yourself and for others. It's really awesome. Like,
well, I love it. I love
like
it.
that.
It's a little selfish because I got tired of driving to Chapel Hill and Durham and Raleigh to see live music. I'm like, I'm going to bring it here.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? Absolutely. Why not? And my dream is to, when I retire, is to have my own music venue. Right now, it's the cafe and the room are owned by this wonderful couple, Amy and John Stevens. I just kind of manage the music part of it, but I would love one day to have my own music venue in Wake Forest.
What is it about music that you enjoy the most? It's a big question.
I admire the talent that goes into writing a song and playing an instrument. I think it's so wonderful to be able to do that. I've written a lot of television commercials and things like that, but I don't know that I can actually write a song. I think that's a God-given talent that a lot of people just don't have. It requires a lot of work and it requires a lot of talent. So I admire people who can do that. But it's also, I always write when I have with music on. It's a soothing thing to me. It's a way to kind of decompress after a day of work. I love going into a venue and just kind of letting the music kind of wash, over me. That kind of sounds kind of cheesy, but
I'm like,
you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
It puts you in a space that you really don't get to any other way.
Yeah.
You can get lost in the film, I guess is the closest way, but I get lost in songs. Mm-hmm. And being a writer, I really listen to lyrics a lot.
Oh my gosh.
And I go, God, how did they think of that? I wish I had turned that phrase,
Absolutely. I actually have a little notebook that when I hear a song lyric that I absolutely love, I will write it down in the notebook. So I have this notebook that's full of 1 or 2 liners from songs where I'm just like, oh my God, like that, what an amazing line. And like,
I know. Yeah.
The emotion that like a single line can like bring out in an entire song is just amazing. So I fully understand what you're saying. I don't think I could have broken that down any better than you did about just letting the music take you away and takes you to another place.
It does.
You also are the co-founder of Be Good to Yourself, which we mentioned earlier is a nonprofit dedicated to providing free mental health care for North Carolina musicians.
This was another kind of a little happy accident that happened in late 2019, early 2020. I started noticing on a lot of the social media groups that I'm a part of on Facebook, elsewhere, that a lot of musicians were really struggling. And the pandemic just exacerbated this, but musicians always deal with anxiety and depression and worrying about where the next, gig's going to be. Am I going to be able to put food on the table and pay my rent? And suicides were very high, always very high mental illness and dependency on drugs and alcohol. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine who's a drummer for several bands around here, who's just saying, from the minute we walk in to bring our equipment till the minute we walk off the stage, people are handing us beers and drinks. Mm-hmm. And you're always around that, and it wrecks people. Some people can do it, some people can't. But right around the time the COVID started, it got worse and worse because shows were being canceled and these folks had no source of income. So I started thinking, and this was kind of just in my own head, like, what could I do to help, these folks get mental health counseling? And I didn't really have a plan in place. I knew kind of the blueprint was create a not-for-profit, partner with a mental health provider. And that was about as far as I got. But it's funny, Allie, because at the same time, I was thinking about that. Some really dear friends of mine in Winston-Salem and Charlotte who participated in the HB2 things and are wonderful musicians were thinking the same thing. In fact, they had already started recording music for a benefit record. And I want to mention their names: Ed Baumgardner, Rob Slater, Chris Garges, Gino Grananetti, Doug Davis. There's a wonderful group of musicians over there had already started this project on their own, and they had named it Be Good to Yourself after a song. And so I don't know how it happened. They just contacted me and said, hey, we're doing this thing. And I was like, dude, I'm thinking the same thing.
Oh, I love it.
They brought me on board as kind of the fundraiser, kind of house mother kind of thing. So I reached out to Abundance NC, which is a wonderful not-for-profit incubator in Pittsburgh. And I applied for one of their, they sponsor, they're a fiscal sponsor of other startups, not-for-profit startups. So they accepted our application. So we're being fiscally sponsored by Abundance, which is an amazing organization. They filed the paperwork. They helped us set up a bank account. They did all the stuff that would have been extraordinarily expensive and time consuming to do if we had tried to do it on our own. So that helped.
Difficult to understand. I'm sure the process is.
Oh, it's
so complicated.
And then you wait 6 months. And anyway, so they expedited all that. We got we have not-for-profit status. And then I reached out to a friend of mine who was Chief Operating Officer of MindPath, which is the largest network of mental health facilities in North Carolina. And they are working with us. They gave us a basically 50% rate on what they normally charge per hour. So we have a mental health partner, so to speak. And then recently we decided we're going to partner with SIMS, the SIMS Foundation, which is based in Austin, Texas. They have been doing this. They've been doing what we want to do for 28 years. In fact, they have their own network of therapists and counselors, and they have like a $2.5 million operating budget.
Holy cow.
They have their own network of providers. They help not only musicians, but the musicians' families, people who work in venues, people who run sound, everybody in the Austin area that is connected with music, they serve. And it's so funny because I reached out to their executive director and I said, hey, we're trying to do the same thing over here. Do you have any tips or pointers? She called me up and said, believe it or not, I was just there for hopscotch. We're opening a Raleigh office in 2022. And so we're like, head explode, right? Head explode. So
oh my gosh.
We are fundraising right now in order to help them move to North Carolina, basically to open it all.
Just absolutely amazing.
It was like kismet, Yeah. Yeah, it was like totally, we were all so thrilled. But I want to talk about the music, Ed and Rob. And so, I want to talk about the music that Ed and Rob and Chris and Gino and Doug are doing. So they started recording what was originally going to be 10 to 15 songs in Chris Garge's studio in Charlotte. And it mushroomed to now they have finished 27 songs with over 60 different North Carolina artists played on this record. It's going to be released as a double CD, an LP, and an EP, plus digital downloads. And it's amazing. So we've got that going. We got T-shirts made. We got stickers. We're starting to sell those. If anybody wants to buy them, it's begoodtoyourselfmusic.com. If you want to learn about the foundation and the mental health part of it, it's the letter B, good, the number 2, yourself.org. So begoodtoyourselfmusic.com. begoodtoyourself.org is our foundation site. Yeah, so we're excited. It has been a labor of love. You have no idea how much time and money goes into recording not just a record, but 27 songs because nobody could be in the same studio together.
I was going to say, just coordinating that alone was probably a huge feat. But listeners, I'll drop the links to begoodtoyourself.org and begoodtoyourselfmusic.com in the episode description. So I would highly recommend everyone go check out both of those sites and, maybe buy a CD or a digital download or a t-shirt. Help them out.
Our mantra is, it's a benefit.
It's for a good cause.
It is for a great cause.
Where can folks find you besides begoodtoyourself.com, music.com, and begoodtoyourself.org? Do you have any socials you'd like to share?
Yeah, we're the Wake Forest Listening Room on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I am almost ready to launch my own real freestanding website for the Wake Forest Listening Room. So that's probably a week or two away. If anybody's interested in seeing the work I've done on the advertising side of things, it's MikeAllenWrites.com. My portfolio is on there. I haven't updated it in a while, but you can see some of the stuff I've done over the years. No, I think that's it.
Amazing.
But you had to ask me about music recommendations.
I was gonna say right before we go though, I would love to get some music recommendations from you.
All right. So I actually wrote these down because my head started spinning when I how long does Allie have? I adore Julian Baker's new record, Little Oblivions. I am geeked out over the Strand of Oak's new record, which is called In Heaven. Manchester Orchestra, The Million Masks of God. I just saw them in Charlotte. They melted faces. They were so good. Lucy Dacus, her new record is called Home Video. She and Phoebe Bridgers and Julian Baker sing together in a trio called Boy Genius. And if you haven't checked that out, you should check that out. And then Lord Huron, love them so much, but their new record is called Long Lost, and it's great. But yeah, that's been on, those have been on regular rotation. And then of course the Be Good to Yourself music, which I listen to at least once a day because it's so good.
Definitely some music to get you in your feels right there.
Yes.
In complete honesty, I've not heard of many of these people, but I'm now going to check them out because I'm curious. So I'm going to give these a listen and I'm going to let you know what I think.
Yeah, tell me. I can't wait to hear what you think. Yeah.
But Mike, I cannot thank you enough for being on the podcast. This has been just a wonderful conversation. And I have absolutely just loved hearing about all of the amazing things that you're doing, that you've done, and that you're currently working on. Like, you really are doing some fantastic things with music and advocacy and creativity.
Well, you never know where this kind of stuff comes from unless there's, like I said, something that you discover in your wanderings that you're passionate about, and then you find these talents and abilities that you have inside you that you didn't know you had. And you can't be afraid to, get out there and try to do stuff, because all you can, like I said, all people can say is no. You may fall on your face, but you'll get back up. It's life is a learning process, and it's easy to get comfortable and complacent, but man, look at the world, and there's so many problems that need to be solved. So go solve them. Those are words to live by, definitely. So thank you so much, Mike, for being on today. Oh, well, it's been a pleasure.
This has been a Coots Creations production. Follow the show on Instagram at wandering_creative_ and on Twitter at wandering_pod. For more information, go to cootscreations.com. Like, rate, review, and subscribe. To sponsor the Wandering Creatives podcast, visit www.cootscreations.com/podcast-sponsorship-opportunities. You can also click the link in the episode description below. To be a guest or a featured maker on the podcast, click the link in our Instagram bio or contact us at cootscreationsllc@gmail.com.